Welcome to Laye&Lucy TV. I'm Lucy.
I'm Shakur. Lucy and I will be talking about what is going on in Africa and especially in Sudan. Lucy, what exactly is going on in Sudan and what is the origin of all that?
Currently, we all know there's a raging war in Sudan. The origin stems from the 2019 ousting of Omar al-Bashir. I'm sure we all know that Omar al-Bashir was removed from the government 19 by the people. So the current conflict in Sudan has been going on, and this year, actually in April, it will be the fourth year because it started in April. It transformed from a power struggle between two generals to become a catastrophic war that we are seeing today, which has been labeled to be the largest humanitarian crisis, and it is almost forgotten, and people are dying and suffering there. So the situation in Sudan, it still remains very fluid with shifting front lines and divided international response. And as I've said, the root cause begins from the ousting of Omar al-Bashir in 2019, and there was a failure of security sector reform. So when this failure emerged, these two generals decided to stage a coup. Which are the two generals I'm speaking about? There is General Abdel Fattah Burhan, who leads the Sudanese Armed Forces, and then there is General Mohammed Hemedi Dagalo, who leads the Rapid Support Forces. So they actually collaborated 2021 to overthrow the civilian transition of government, which was in place after Omar al-Bashir was overthrown.
Okay, what is exactly Rapid Support Forces and who is leading it and what is their interest?
In the ongoing war, if I may add, there are two main parties. I would say two main parties. That is, as you've rightly said, the Rapid Support Forces, and then there is the Sudanese Armed Forces. The Rapid Support Forces, if you can recall, stemmed from the Janjaweed militia, which was in place which was wreaking havoc in Sudan during the 2003 genocide. And actually, even to date, what is currently going on has been labeled as genocide. So let me just take you back a bit. In 2021, when now these two generals decided to overthrow the civilian government, which was a transitional government, to hold the fort as they straighten up things after the removal of al-Bashir, these two people decided to work together. And even during the time of Omar al-Bashir, they were working together. Only that the SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces, was the government. The other one was also, I would call it a paramilitary force.
Military.
Yeah, so if you decide to call it such, yes, so it was a quasi-military force. So they were working for the government, for the al-Bashir. But now, when al-Bashir, their master, was ejected, they found themselves in a situation whereby it wasn't good for them, and their existence as powers was threatened. So now that is when in 2021 they decided to join forces to overthrow the transitional government. Afterwards, while the two generals are fighting each other, because now they're in opposite sides, what happened, there was some sort of integration dispute. What do I mean by this? So in December 2022, there was some framework agreement which was entered into, and they were trying to return the Sudanese government into a civilian rule. Remember, since around 1989 to 2019, when this government was being overthrown of al-Bashir, al-Bashir also government had been a military rule, and Sudan has consistently been ruled by the military, not by civilian. So when al-Bashir was ousted by the population, by his population, the civilian, there was hope that they will have a civilian rule. But then when these two generals saw it was not in their best interest, they decided to join forces to overthrow transitional head of state. I forget his name. And then they took over. But there were discussions on how they need to manage this conflict or this situation to ensure that it doesn't slide into the war we are seeing now. But then the breaking point was that the SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces, which used to be recognized as the main military element of the country, and it is still being recognized that by the international community, demanded that this transition would take like 2 years. And then the Rapid Support Forces wanted a 10 years transitional window before they, I would so to speak, straighten out their issues. During this back and forth and discussions here and there were tensions because these two military generals, they do not agree. They would not agree on various points, and this is what caused this domino effect and led to what we are seeing now, the current humanitarian crisis and the current genocide. But then probably I should give a more detailed explanation about what I've said to maybe help our viewers understand. So, during these 30 years when al-Bashir was in power, what he was doing, he was systematically managing the two factions, this military faction. Know that SAF was the recognized military unit. Rapid Support was the Janjaweed, but then it was subsumed into the government as a paramilitary unit. Yeah. So how he was managing these two, he was constantly ensuring that he's balancing their interests and is always making sure that they're both competing so that they don't collude to remove him. That is how he managed them. And I will give you examples of what he was doing. He was a very clever man. So what he was doing is that he gave RSF its own budget, separate from the military budget of SAF. He gave RSF gold mines, which they would manage, and we will speak about that a bit probably later, how now even these gold mines is perpetuating this war. He gave them a legal status as an independent or quasi-independent army or military unit. By 2019, when al-Bashir was ousted, RSF was not a militia group. It was a paramilitary group or a quasi-military unit with its own parallel state, with its own economy. It has gold mines. It would control. It had its policy. So when now al-Bashir was ousted, General Burhan of SAF was leading the Sudanese army, and then General Hemeti, who was leading the RSF, were not willing to surrender this power they have to a civilian person. Both of these people have been military or have been ruling by gun.
It's like they don't want to give away their power.
No. So that is why the coup, which happened in 2021, was very strategic. They did that because they saw that it was an existential threat to them, because they saw that, like now RSF, saw that their source of livelihood, they are controlling gold mines. They are independent to do what they have. They were seemingly above the law. So really, that is what happened. Now, those are not the only actors. There are other small actors down there, although you don't see them a lot in the news, because these are the two major people. Two generals are the two main people in this conflict. So you will see that what the civilian government had planned to do was that the one which was removed by coup now by these two generals, was that it wanted to absorb the paramilitary, this RSF into SAF, like into the national military.
Unite them under one command,
Yes, it wanted to unite them. So what does uniting them mean? It means a lot. It means that the RSF will lose their gold mines, like all these things. Their autonomy, they had their own budget. It means that budget, they needed to be budgeted under the national budget. So their budget would be slashed. The gold mines would be the national treasure of Sudan, not of RSF. You see? So there was imminent existential threat, or it was like death to RSF if they agreed with what this civilian government wanted. And then also, you know, how RSF came about, it was formed by the Janjaweed, the perpetrators of the previous genocide, you know? So it knew that if it followed suit, it also knew that they will have to be forced, all those leaders, they have to face the law. They will have to go to ICC. So like they have to be put accountable for what they have done during the previous years and during the time that al-Bashir was in power. Thing would have happened to the SAF because it was still under al-Bashir and al-Bashir was being indicted. So the thing is that they saw it wasn't on their favor. So they united against the civilians. So that's what happened.
If I understand, they united against the civilian rule that civilians cannot rule, but after that they disagree about who will command the united forces, and then the forces start breaking up.
Yes, that's what you have said. Who will now be the overall command? No one wanted to give up their power. You know, they say power is corrupting. And then the other thing is that since there was a coup, neither the SAF, neither the RSF would be recognized. Because under AU, any country or anyone who gets into power under any coup, that government is not recognized. So it meant that they are not recognized. What became now, it's a strife between the two, the SAF and the RSF.
Not because I think they have a parallel government. So none of these government is recognized by African Union.
At the moment, there is what I would call a diplomatic quarantine against RSF by AU. What do I mean by this is that most recently in this February, the AU Peace and Security Council met. And one of the things they agreed is that they formally condemned the RSF, meaning that they are agreeing with SAF. But SAF, initially it was part of the military of the country. So now that RSF has been condemned, it means that they agree with, or they somewhat side with SAF. This is what I would imply from that outright rejection by the AU recently in beginning of February when they had that Peace and Security Council. So the fact that they did not condemn or reject the government of SAF it means that they agree with it.
So
but
they see SAF like a mean government, you know, the extension of the transition government.
Yes. And then also the fact that in the ongoing humanitarian intervention by the UN has acknowledged SAF as the primary unit of the government or representative of the government, but not RSF. So that by implication means that SAF is more in favor. I think also it's because of the aspects of the previous genocide of the 2003, the current ongoing genocide, because there has been reports of genocide.
But I don't think it's not just like that, because everybody want to see the continuation of government. The state is express continuation of the governments. If SAF have been there before RSF was born, they feel that they are the real army of the Sudan. So I think that is the main reason. And also, if you see the geographic who control who where, SAF is controlling more than what rapid support forces controlling. So I think that means a lot. That means that regional power are much more favor into Sudanian armed forces than rapid forces. So because this conflict is very
Yes, it's very complicated. It's complex.
Complex because it is just not internal affair, internal problem. It is not about ethnic alone. It is not about the region or too powerful person, but it's also about external power, like UAE, for example, and Egypt and some other country. So I just want to know if you can tell us their interest in it.
Okay, there's a number of external factors who are influencing the war. You've rightly said that. And these external factors are aligning themselves with different parties of this conflict. And the different parties of the conflict we are speaking about here is the two generals, one who is heading the Sudanese Armed Forces, the other who is heading the Rapid Support Forces. Increasingly, I see critics are saying that it is a proxy war, and I think it is based on different aspects. One, you see, the UAE has been widely reported to be supporting the RSF. And how is it doing this? It is funding the RSF through weapons, and these weapons are being taken to Sudan through Chad. And why is it doing this? The interest at stake for UAE is that it wants to control or the supply of gold from Sudan. Remember when I told you that to manage the two generals or the two military units, al-Bashir had given them a lot of leeway and done a lot of things. What had happened is that he had given RSF control of very many things. A lot of gold mines, which now are owned by the company of Hemeti. Sudan has a lot of gold. And even before the war started in 2019, I read that about 70% of exports from Sudan was gold. It had even overtaken oil, which was an export before. But Sudan by itself is very wealthy. It has a lot of resources, and gold is a major export. That is not to say also that SAF doesn't control gold. There is some gold mines that it controls, because currently the RSF controls the west, mainly the west of the country, and then the SAF controls the east and the north, the RSF. They had this I would call the shadow economy, even when al-Bashir was there, because they had gold, they had other things like gum Arabic, they had their own banking system, all this. And when the civilian government was installed, this transitional government, I remember now the person was called Abdallah Hamdok. So RSF felt threatened that all these will be taken and put in the national basket, where now it will be subject to distribution, equal distribution countrywide. And then you can't take a juicy morsel out of someone's mouth when it's already there. Fight, Now that is what they are currently doing. That is what is currently happening, because they saw now their gold and the influence and the shadow economy they had existing when al-Bashir was the president will fade. So they were not ready for that. And that's why when this security sector reform was proposed by the civilian government, they were asking for a longer time. They were asking for 10 years so that they can put their house in order before they, yes. And a lot can happen in 1 year. So imagine 10 years. And SAF wanted 2 years. So that was the point of contention. They couldn't agree. And also their interest at heart. So what were we speaking about? The external actors. So yes, the UAE, gold in exchange for weapons. And then we have another actor, Egypt. Egypt is said to be the main supporter of SAF, because it views it as the legitimate army and the only guarantor of peace in the country. And it also has its interest, because Egypt has a dispute with Ethiopia because of this grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which was opened. So Sudan was enjoined in the case. So I think that why Egypt is there and supporting SAF is because it knows that if SAF is seen as the main military unit, and if it takes over the power, then it will help bolster their case against Ethiopia. And then we have Iran, surprisingly, Turkey. Also, they're also parties to this conflict, because they are also suppliers of weapons. Even UAE is supplying drones to RSF. These drones are coming from China, but yes, of course, the UAE is buying them for that in exchange of the gold. SAF is also getting drones from Turkey, and it also has gold mines, and it is exchanging the gold for the weapon, because when RSF began emboldening itself militarily, and now the war changed from the ground war to air dominated war where it has drones. You know, previously SAF had a lot of these military planes which would be bombing, dropping ammunition or killing people. RSF didn't have that. Mainly RSF, if you remember during the 2003 genocide, they when they were calling themselves Janjaweed, how they were being identified is camel riding or horse riding. So mainly, yes, they had weapons like guns and all these other ammunition, but the war was,
it was not high tech,
like on land properly. Now SAF was the one, because it was actually the government. It had the military, the military planes which engage in warfare. But now, once the RSF decided to take this advanced weaponry, the drones, SAF also saw that it also needs to upgrade, because it can't be fighting drones with planes. It's also getting drones. So this warfare, it's I think it has been termed to be a high-tech war. Yeah, because now the drones are allowing these two parties of conflict to cover an expansive geographical area, because drones can be controlled from very far, and because the drones they are procuring,
you can be sitting here and then fighting some other area or destroying some other area, you know. So drones have changed the way the war used to fight before.
Yeah, you can even borrow an example from the Russia-Ukraine war, because now it is a drone warfare. You find that both sides of the conflict have held it for a very long time because of the use of this technology.
And then about the drone warfare now. So it is not very expensive, like military plane, like helicopter, and some other heavy machinery. So now you can buy some tech material and sit down and put them together, and then that can give you a drone. And then it is also easier. It is very easier now to smuggle it from a country to country. So I think drone have changed a lot of things. But what does that mean about humanitarian situation? You know, that some people are sitting at their home or in the bunker like that, and then attacking infrastructure of civilian area, populous areas. What that means?
Okay, before I address what it means to the humanitarian, maybe it's good I finish all those other. I have left I think 2 or 3 other external actors. I've spoken about UAE, Egypt, Iran, and Turkey. There's also Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has positioned itself as a lead mediator through what they are calling the Jeddah talks. But their main interest is the investments in the Red Sea ports of Sudan. You know, a port of entry is a very strategic national asset. And then also we have Russia. Russia has also been linked to the gold mines. Allegedly, it is said that they are supporting RSF, and more recently they are also seeking a naval base in Port Sudan. So those are the key players, and those key players, they all also have their national interest.
But Lucy, wait now. In African conflict, so the main actors are external people, countries that are not part of Africa. They are the most important actors in this conflict. They are the
That's why they are calling it the proxy war, and why it's also very important. We cannot deny the economics, the global political economy. Economically, many countries are struggling. I think for the past couple of years, there's been a say that globally we will go to recession. We will go there one day, depression and then recession. But before that comes, there are all these other things which are happening. And that's why all these countries, these other external countries are positioning themselves. And why are they positioning themselves? So that they can prop their economy. And during warfare or during these kinds of depression and recession in the economy, money, the value of the money goes down. And knowing that most countries' money is pegged on the dollar, and knowing what is happening in the American political arena, where now it is affecting a lot of people's investments. So most countries are looking for gold. They are looking to ensure that they have a lot of gold reserve. And who has gold?
So that's the
Sudan.
reason. Yeah, that is the
Sudan
reason.
has a lot of gold.
That is the reason.
So why they are a lot of interest there. Most of them are pretending to be here to mediate. We are here to help resolve the issue, but no. They want you to fight for them. They get the gold, and they stabilize the economy, and that's why this war has been called self-perpetuating, because you see now these two main parties to this conflict are trading the gold for ammunition, these drones. So the war is self-perpetuating. As long as they still have gold that they can sell externally, the war will still continue.
Yeah, I'm very engaged in this topic. When you're talking, I'm just, the questions start to, pop up, so before you go to humanitarian aspect of this conflict,
I didn't even answer that.
Yeah, so I have to ask another question again that pop up. What African Union is doing, what can they do to stop an external actor out of the continent? Do they have a power, or they can do nothing? They are there to just watch and see, and they can do nothing. So I'm just wondering.
So anyway, African Union for the longest has been called a bulldog without teeth. The thing is that it is just all say, and not so much is seen. And then also you'll find that even people who are leading this peace talk, they also have vested national interests. What am I saying? Okay, first, the African Union current strategy is just the normative defense. Normative means that they're trying to follow what laws is there to try and manage the situation. So they are trying to manage the situation and trying to prevent the crack or the partition of Sudan, because as you mentioned earlier, we have these two generals who are fighting, and they have captured different regions and they're controlling different regions. It means that if they're controlling these different regions and they have refused to relinquish their powers in these regions they are manning, then
it can lead to partition.
Yes, it can lead to partition. What happened in South Sudan, before Sudan was a large, and then it became South Sudan, and the current Sudan, the one which has conflict. Anyway, so the African Union is trying to prevent that fracture, like trying to ensure that the country still remains one. Yeah. So how is it trying to wade away or push away these external or foreign meddlers? It's just by naming and shaming them. But we all know naming and shaming in the current world we live in, people are shameless, countries are shameless, governments are shameless. I argue nowadays that liberal democracy used to make people shameful, because they would actually try to think of humanity, about rights of others. Now, no, they are not thinking about that. Now it is pure realism, thinking about your self-interest, the interest of your nation. If you have to trample over everyone else, as long as you survive, that is what is happening. So I'm sure you listened to the Munich Security Conference. What they were preaching is that they were like, one of the aspects which Marco Rubio raised was he was urging the European brothers and sisters to recolonize the former colonies, or to exert their might, and then to ensure that they safeguard their supply routes. And who are the main suppliers? We are the source. Africa is the source, supplies for everyone else, and it kills itself. We fight each other, people extract, and we are left with nothing. Anyway, I don't think it is doing so much. And as I mentioned before, there was that Peace and Security Council, which was held early in February. I think it was 12th of February. One of the things which they agreed was to reject the parallel government. The one they are rejecting is the RSF government. And then they also endorsed something they call Idris Peace Plan. There was a transitional prime minister who was called Camille Idris. In 2025, he had called for a tripartite monitoring mechanism by AU, UN, and Arab League to oversee the humanitarian truce and the withdrawal of RSF from the urban center. So the AU endorsed that Idris peace plan, like the tripartite monitoring mechanism. And then AU also says that it wants to be on the ground monitoring the situation, what is happening. You remember when all these conflicts started, the coup in 2021, most international organizations, most embassies exited. They exited from Sudan, because of safety issues and the dynamics of the conflict. But eventually, the humanitarian component placed itself at Port Sudan, up in the north, so that's where the humanitarian coordination of Sudan is happening from. But now AU wasn't there, so now one of the things it suggested during this peace and Security Council was that it wants to reestablish itself on the ground so that it can have eyes on the ground, see what is happening, and engage directly with the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? The RSF and the SAF. So they want to have a presence also in Port Sudan, because now that's where this international humanitarian coordination is happening from, and it's a little bit safer than being inside the country. Before, it used to be in Khartoum, but Khartoum is not viable anymore because of the dynamics of the conflict. So I think that's one thing which the AU is doing in different yes, it is diplomacy.
AU do not have a military to challenge them of this warring fraction, and these external actors, they are if you combine them, their money together and their military together is so powerful. So the only thing AU can do is just like to use diplomacy and then try to have a leverage over parties one way or another.
Yes, that's true. And about what you mentioned, I think there's been also discussions of deployment of some sort, like AU UN protection mission. There's been proposal about that, sending that to Sudan. I think more recently, during the same Peace Security Council that happened, there was discussions about that. I'm not so sure whether it would be possible because, as you know, the UN funds these, and also there's been a lot of funding gaps in most of these UN organizations. So these funding gaps, which are also affecting AU, would affect that proposal of having protecting the civilians by having this protection mission. But yes, there was that, they were toying with the idea of invoking the article of the AU Constitutive Act, which says they have a right to intervene. EU has a right to intervene in cases of genocide and war crimes. So yes, I think AU is not doing so much. And one other thing which I almost forgot is that, when there was the coup, which was orchestrated by these two generals, Sudan was suspended from AU. So it means that actually, even in the AU itself, there is a question of legitimacy of who it will recognize in the aspect of these peace talks, or trying who will be the face or the representative of Sudan when it comes to AU in terms of these peace talks and all that. But we see already that they have condemned RSF. So by implication, it means that they are siding with SAF. But then also you find that Egypt chairs, like currently is chairing the Peace and Security Council in the AU. And we say Egypt has also its vested interest. You remember I mentioned. So, you can't be a mediator also with the vested interest. A mediator or someone who is trying to bring two people together or trying to resolve something should be neutral. But then when a mediator has some vested interest, then the other side will say that it is not fair. So, and we have already seen RSF is potentially being alienated. So, yeah, it's complicating the situation. So, it is difficult for AU. And I think
I think it's very difficult, but it can also be very
yes.
easier for EU to have found solution for this. It's about willingness. If they
Tell me,
really
tell
will,
me. Mm-hmm.
if they really will, so they can find
Mm-hmm.
solution. This solution is nothing more than politics, nothing more than
Yes.
diplomacy. So they don't need to have a soldiers or army inside Sudan to monitor or to see who is going or who is coming. No, if they
Mm-hmm.
really want, so they can put these two brothers. Two, they used to call themselves brothers. They was holding hand together. So they have to have a direct line between them. So they have to come and sit down and talk about peace. As you said, so long the gold is part of this, it's so
Mm-hmm.
difficult because
Yes.
the gold become like a blood that a
Yeah.
heart need, to live. So gold has become the weapon here. The gold is the one who bringing the weapon through exchange of
Yeah.
gold, so they can get access to war market. And then we have seen
Mm-hmm.
Emirate, the
Yes.
Emirates.
UAE.
Yeah,
Yes.
so they
Mm-hmm.
have become like a gold center of war now. Everybody go traveling there to buy gold, and then they do
Yes.
not produce gold. So the question is, where all these
Mm-hmm.
gold are coming from? So as you said, Sudan is one of the major producer of the gold, and this
Mm-hmm.
gold is going there. There's a direct line between Dagalo and UAE, and then
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
UAE is supplying weapon technology to their friends to do war, to have a control over that part of Sudan. So African Union and then East African community need
Mm-hmm.
to put pressure on this country. For example, Chad can play very major role here if they receive weapon and then transfer it to RSF, become a problem, because that
Mm-hmm.
means so long Chad receiving weapon and then giving it away, so the war will not stop. So the
Mm-hmm.
question is it true Chad really receiving war material and then giving it to RSF? If that is true, so Chad
Mm-hmm.
itself is just it has involved itself in the conflict, and then any blood of civilian, we can say that Chad have something to do with it. African Union may also think these African countries that are supporting war and then they are financing it and then they are giving
Mm-hmm.
material, they have to suspend them. And but the problem is African Union is not so powerful.
For me, I
Mm.
say I call it a community of leaders who protect each other, because there are very many things which go wrong in Africa, and the African Union, you find they are taking side with the wrong thing. So they are protecting each other. I'll give you an example. Kenya has been said to be a conduit of this war too, because you found the RSF came to launch their, I think their manifesto or whatever in Kenya. So Kenya has also been pretending to be a neutral habitat, but it is not. The thing is that gold also from Sudan is passing through Kenya. Recently, Kenya is also giving these factions, these leaders of RSF have been given Kenyan passports illegally so that they can pass through Kenya and go do their trade globally, because they know that if they are using their Sudanese passports, they will be frozen, and there's those checks, international checks and balances, and the fact that there's been a lot of call to arrest them. Actually, I think the ICC is drafting charges for those leaders because
Yeah,
of the ongoing genocide. Actually, African Union is made up of disingenuous leaders who look for their personal interests. It's actually not national interest, personal interests. How they are going to benefit from war, the way these external actors are benefiting from it. So I think that is our bane as African Union. That's what brings us down.
yeah, we almost 50 plus countries and
Mm-hmm.
1 billion up to 2 billion population,
Yeah.
and all the
Mm-hmm.
resources in this war is belong to us. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, small country, yeah,
Yeah.
UAE and Qatar and
Mm-hmm.
all these Gulf
Mm-hmm.
country, we need them
Yeah.
come and talk to us. What can Saudi
Mm-hmm.
Arabia tell African Union when it is matter about African Union itself? So I
Mm-hmm.
think our leaders need to work better. They need to do better to develop this continent because we don't deserve it. People in Darfur,
Yeah.
in Khartoum, they don't deserve
Yeah.
situation here. See, it is like how long can this conflict go? For example, so long there is a goal and accountability is not taken seriously. How long can this conflict go? For example,
Finding a sustainable political settlement or stabilizing Sudan will take a while. This is what I think. Because one, as we have said, the gold, by the fact that there is gold, it means that this war is paying for itself. And the two generals who are fighting, they are not so much interested in the million people who have been displaced. They are just interested in their personal interest and their strife
how
for
many
power.
millions? How many million?
I'm not so certain. I may be giving wrong answers, but I'm thinking it is from upwards of 13 million of people who have been displaced.
Wow.
Meaning for the refugee estimate, which the most recent estimate that I looked at was about 4.3 million, and then the others are internally displaced. So it's a big number which has been displaced. But one thing we are sure is that everyone, whether you have been displaced or not, and you are in Sudan, you are suffering because this warfare has crippled all the infrastructure, health, sanitation, food. People are dying of hunger. And to make it worse, funding is little. So that's why they're calling it a very big humanitarian catastrophe.
Yeah, I think, just imagine millions of civilians have fled their homes as so that itself, if they flee into different country, so that will cause a lot of problem in that country
Yes.
because they are not prepared to take all these refugees in.
You can imagine the main countries they are fleeing to are almost the poorest, because most are fleeing to South Sudan and Chad. They are the bottom 3, if not 5, of the poorest countries in the world. Really, you can imagine the humanitarian toll, because these countries are also suffering because they are not able to take care of their own citizens.
Population.
And then add on other people forced to migrate. It's really straining the economies, and I am sure these people who have fled are living in deplorable situations. So that's why most of the international community is calling for funding to help these people who have been forced to flee.
So
Yeah.
I think to take care of those who are fleeing from the conflict, a refugee is very important, as
Very
well as
important.
to solve this problem, because millions of people have been fleeing, and then most of them they don't even have the money to even go from war area to safety. So it costs money, and they don't have that money. And then when those who don't have a chance to come there, so I think most of them we experience famine, for example, food. We have seen in the city was siege. A lot of people was dying because of the food, because there was not enough food. So, and then if the war continues like this, as it always have done, so there will be a lot of damage of infrastructure, because drone will come straight and then bomb. And then when they bomb it, so it will be very difficult for people to move, for clean water to people to have a clean water, and people will have a lot of diseases, for example, cholera, malnutrition, and other stuff, and hunger.
Yeah.
I think also when the conflict continue as it is now, so it will be very insecure for those who will do humanitarian rescue, for example, who will carry food into the war zone, so if you are unlucky, so even if it is written war food program on the car, you can bomb it. And
actually they've been bombing, and now, with this crisis, it has become very difficult for the humanitarian intervention, because now you find the international organizations and the UN have to negotiate with the two factions to be able to go or to reach the people in need. So they have the two parties, they have to negotiate with them. So you might find that they have approval from one and then the other they don't get approval or they are attacked. So it's becoming extremely dangerous, and there are a number of humanitarian workers who have been killed last year from this war. Like they have been targeted. They are delivering aid and they are targeted because with the drones it's almost becoming indiscriminate. They are just targeting everything: hospitals, kindergarten, humanitarian convoy. So it is quite sad, especially where there is bit of some food or some medicine for the people who are suffering, but it can't reach them because of this bureaucracy from the two warring factions.
This is very interesting topic, and then we cannot finish this topic.
We can't finish.
Yeah, so hopefully there will be a peace in Sudan, because I was reading recently about Sudan. Sudan is regarded as one of the Africa unstable country. It has been over 20 attempt or successful coup. I think, yeah, 20 attempt and successful coup, so 13 of 8 was fail coup, and 7 of them was success. So it ranked number 2 after Bolivia.
That is true, because I remember in some talks I had with someone, we were calling it the coup laboratory. That is where coups have been manufactured, because there have been so many coups, and it's true there have been more than 20 coups in that country since the 1930s to date. So yeah, it is quite unstable.
If we can conclude just in 10 sentences.
Okay, what is going on in Sudan is war, because generals decided to be very selfish and think about themselves instead of thinking about the population, the country. General Hemeti and General Burhan could not agree, or they could not fathom that the country may come under the civilian rule. They decided to join hands and stage a coup in 2021 to ouster the civilian transitional government, which was in place after Omar al-Bashir. And now, because of other supervening interests, mainly gold and power, they still are not willing to sit down and discuss and agree for the best of their country. So they are funding this war through the natural resources of the country. So gold is exiting Sudan through various porous borders. And in return, military and ammunition and drones are coming in to kill the people of Sudan. It's quite a sad situation where people are dying because there's been strategic attack at civilians. It has been said that so far, since the beginning of the war, of 100,000 people have been killed. That is the numbers which has been reported differently by different outlets, and millions have been displaced within the country and outside the country. We find that the AU is between the rock and the hard place on how to resolve this issue. This issue is going on, and because the external actors who are coming in to try to mediate also have a vested interest stemming from the resources of the country, then the war is perpetuating itself. So when and how it will end, I am not so sure, because everyone who is coming in to try to resolve it has a vested interest. So that's the short of it.
Thank you so much. I think this is engagement for everybody to come and then contribute to the peace. I don't know how we contribute, but talking about it, will lead to peaceful transition of the situation in Sudan. So what I can also hear is about lack of trust from the beginning to the end. Is lack of trust. So if you imagine 20 coup d'etat or attempted coup, and then now 2 generals are fighting because of lack of trust. The other one don't trust A don't trust B don't trust A, and they themselves, they don't trust the civilian government. So We hope that our content will be trustworthy in the near future. If you like our video, please come and click, like it, and share it, and then you can send messages to us so we can also have it talk with you if you want to join us.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.